Hello, folks. Welcome to the Newswhip Pulse. I'm Paul Quigley, and joining me is Gabriel Sands of Reddit. Um,
Hi, everyone.
so thanks for joining us, Gabriel. I'm going to make sure everything is working. Yes, I can see participants appearing. As you may have seen, Newswhip's announced a major partnership with Reddit. And as always here on the Pulse, we want to talk about speed to insight. So this week, we're going to be talking about speed to insight about Reddit as a platform, about our integration with Reddit, and how Reddit's going to be integrating more widely and is integrating with the wider media sphere. So we were really excited to partner with Reddit, and I'm going to really briefly walk you through why and why we think it's so relevant for people in media today. So I will just work the technology. Great. So hopefully you can see our lovely screens here. So what I want to share too, first big thing about Reddit is you're looking at 130,000 active communities going into the most detailed of niches and any beat or topic or interest area you might want to research or have an immediate deadline about. And the people in those communities are really knowledgeable and expert users. They've gathered together in the areas that they're really interested in their lives, and they hence you get a really high standard of understanding and conversation. And you also get really open and honest discussion on topics because people are using pseudonymous. Oh, I should have looked up how to pronounce that right beforehand. You're better at this one, Gabriel. What do I call it?
Pseudonymous.
Pseudonymous, because they use pseudonymous names, but are experts. You get this really high quality, honest, and open discussion as well. And it's very passionate about a very long tail of all kinds of different topics, areas, lifestyles, and ideas. And maybe what a lot of people know Reddit about immediately in the media world is it's where a lot of trends and memes begin before they jump onto Twitter or Facebook or mainstream or get picked up on BuzzFeed. A lot of really creative, interesting things happen in the communities on Reddit. And with the integration, what we wanted to do and what we invite our users to do is to log in and dig in, because you're able to create clusters of subreddits to monitor and search for content, search by keyword, find the most relevant comments, really unearth the most interesting things in Reddit very, very efficiently, to use those in your reporting and in your creative work. So that's kind of the 30,000 foot on the partnership. And so what I might do now, Gabriel, is change gears and maybe ask you some fundamental questions about Reddit and not assume that we all know what we're talking about here. So can you tell us a little bit first about Reddit, please?
Let's do it. I tend to assume nothing. Reddit is at its core a network of communities that are based on interests. These interests can be very specific, like cats standing up, and they can be very broad, like politics or history or science. We're finding a new one every day. We have over 130,000 active communities. I found one yesterday called It's Snowing on Mount Fuji, which is dedicated to bizarre haiku poems. So really running the gamut. And understanding this orientation around communities is really key to understanding how Reddit works, and specifically how Reddit is different than other social platforms that you may encounter. So Twitter, Facebook, Insta, so on. Those platforms all pretty much have an orientation around individuals and individual profiles. So you have a profile as an individual human being or as a media organization or as a brand. You post to that profile, people follow your profile, and that's how they encounter your posts. On Reddit, it's a little bit different. Profiles as a product do certainly exist on Reddit, but people are more likely on Reddit to join a community than they are to follow a profile. Therefore, if you want people to interact with what you're doing, you have to fish where the fish are, and the fish are swimming around in all of those communities. But because it's really about the community and what a bunch of individuals are banding together to do, it's really important for individual news organizations to not try to, jump in and hijack a conversation, but really try to integrate into an environment that frankly existed before they got there, knowing that they have unique value to add.
And when you think of, how media's, say, the generic expectations people in media have of Reddit and where the misperceptions are, what would you say those are? What are the expectations and how do they mismatch with the reality of Reddit?
Yeah, so I think that historically Reddit has been viewed as an environment that maybe wasn't super open to publisher engagement, and maybe even particularly unfriendly to that type of interaction. And listen, Reddit is big and the communities are not uniform, and it's going to depend. We have some communities that are support communities, for example, r/schizophrenia. I don't really think they want to hear from a media organization. They just want to deal with other people who are experiencing this issue. So context is really key. And oftentimes when I see that someone had a bad experience, I ask them, well, where on Reddit were you? Because context really matters. You can't really paint Reddit with a broad brush. It's just too big. The other thing is to be mindful of your behavior. If you drop into a community where you've never been before and you're essentially spamming the community with a lot of links, that's really disruptive to the flow of the community. So therefore, when you really take a step back, it shouldn't actually be surprising that people become a bit agitated that someone has jumped into their community and is really just trying to promote themselves. We talk about giving and taking, and there really needs to be a healthy balance between those two. Reddit has also come a long way as a company. We are still quite small, but we're nearly 3x the employee size as when I started. And with that, the media partnerships team has grown, which has given us now years of opportunity to create productive working relationships, not just with news and media organizations, but also with the volunteer moderators who run individual subreddits where we may be interacting with those news orgs. And as a result, we've been able to really create a culture and a precedent for news and media organizations to interact with Reddit users in a productive way and to really build relationships that are quite meaningful. And we've seen that now over the past few years really come to a head in a nice way.
That's great. I mean, I think it sounds a little bit like how you might expect to interact with a real community. You're not parachuting in there necessarily. You're coming in to interact with real people and ask questions as a real person, and maybe as a platform, it's much more like that, like the real world in a sense, or in some dimensions. So maybe we asked beforehand, Gabriel, because people have sub communities that they love and that really reveal the dimensions of Reddit, to share a couple of those, and you'd send a couple over. So let's talk about those, and I can share a couple of pictures on the screen. And before I do, I can see Dan's, I think, has sent in a question already. If anyone's got any questions, we're going to be holding the last few minutes for questions. So if any questions for Gabriel at all, please drop them into the chat, and we'll come to those. And Danielle is going to be clearing house and collecting the questions together for us to answer. So let me again work the technology. Okay, so Gabriel, right away we're looking at, there's two that seemed related you sent over: restore sanity in politics and neutral, or moderate politics and neutral politics. Can you tell us about these?
Yes. So Reddit is definitely a large destination for news consumption and news discussion. I believe we were actually recently the #1 news app in the Apple Store. So while Reddit does a lot of things, news is definitely a big part of it. It's part of the reason why my role exists, frankly, at this company. So political discourse, particularly in the US, has become extremely fraught. Anyone that's living here, or probably anyone in the world, because we tend to be of global interest, for better or worse, is a bit exhausted and worn down. So these are two communities that I see as a really nice antidote to the devolution of dialogue that we've often been witnessing, and really, I think, showcase many of the better aspects of what Reddit can do. Moderate Politics is not actually a community specifically for people who are moderate in that they are neither left nor right. It's specifically a conversation. It's a community for moderate discourse, meaning no screaming, no incivility, because there really is a lot to discuss. And when people are shouting over each other, it can really be hard to have a dialogue. So Moderate Politics has been a really great place for that type of conversation. And you will notice that there are people across the political spectrum in that community having conversations. I really enjoyed that one. And Neutral Politics is similar. I believe Neutral Politics is just a bit bigger. And as you can see based on the headline, it's evidence, logic, and respect. Those are what they are really all about. So it is similar in tone to Moderate Politics in that there's no yelling, screaming, and shouting. And in Neutral Politics in particular, evidence and logic-based statements are really critical. And I think we could all use more of those these days. The overall length and level of erudition that you will see from these users, I think, is quite remarkable, and is definitely, I think, worth showcasing. I think it would be very hard to find this level of intelligent conversation, particularly on this topic, happening elsewhere. And this is why we're very proud to be able to, host that on Reddit.
It's very, like, as you explained it, Gabriel, the pieces are joining up in my head. Like when you have other social media where it's oriented around the following of people and people become tribal leaders, so they'll own someone else and they're completely broadcasting to the converted, right? There's no conversation. There's just, look at these disgusting people from the other group, and everyone nods and retweets. Whereas here you've got a discussion, it's community orientation. It's about actually kicking a football around, thinking about things. And so the orientation of the entire platform changes that dynamic, which is powerful. Which maybe is here we're getting into something very different then, and something that the news world has been engaging with already, right, Gabriel?
Yes. So QAnon casualties. There's also a counterpart community that I think is called QAnonymous. So this is the QAnon casualties is a community that was created specifically for people who have lost loved ones to the QAnon conspiracy theory. The other one, the name for which I couldn't exactly remember, is for people who had, fallen into the QAnon conspiracy theory but have since recovered. But this one is certainly more of a focal point because I think more people have lost someone to this than have recovered themselves from it, unfortunately. So yeah, this is really speaking to the power of pseudonymity on Reddit. And we actually saw a similar community pop up earlier on in the COVID crisis called COVID Anonymous, where people who were positive or presumed positive were able to share information about what they were experiencing and ask each other questions. Particularly earlier on, there was a great stigma around being COVID-19 positive, and therefore Reddit, being a more pseudonymous platform, allows people to share a bit more openly and feel a sense of community without needing to, out themselves per se. I think QAnon casualties falls into a similar category in that, people probably don't want to identify themselves or their loved ones. Redditors are generally pretty averse to doxing, even if it is self-doxing. So QAnon casualties has really become a great support community for those folks. And people are able to plan and strategize how they maybe would do an intervention with a family member, or just vent and talk about how awful this has been for them, and be able to relate to other folks who have had a similar experience. This is also a prime example of journalistic sourcing from Reddit. If you take any time to scroll through QAnon casualties, you will notice there are many, many posts from many media organizations, well over a dozen, probably over 24. I haven't counted them all, basically saying, hey, we are reporting on this, and if anyone, from the subreddit wants to be a source, please let us know. That is a really good example of media organizations, I think, being respectful and mindful of their surroundings, but also still offering to engage with users, but very much on their terms. They are letting people come forward if they want to share their stories. They're not demanding information from them. And I thought that was a really good contemporary example of how communities that are particularly unique to Reddit can be leveraged for in turn unique, news coverage.
Excellent, excellent. And I suppose coming back to the idea of Reddit being a place of discussion, tell us about Change My View.
So Change My View has been on Reddit for a long time. And as you can see, it has over 1 million members. And it's basically a place where you post an opinion that, may be flawed, and you are openly welcoming other perspectives. And as you can see in the last line there, it says, enter with a mindset for conversation, not debate. That is really important. So you can see the top post here. CMV stands for Change My View. That is the post format for every post title in that community. Our current presidential debate formats are pointless and need to be overhauled. That is an opinion that I think many folks have. Many folks may also disagree. And this person is basically saying, change my view. So basically convince me that these debate formats have a point and don't need to be overhauled in this case. But you will see Change My View posts around a variety of different topics. They're often extremely interesting. And what's even more interesting than the topic themselves is the discussion that then ensues. It is really remarkable. It is what the world really needs more of right now. And you will see that if someone's view is successfully changed, then they, I believe, are flared with Delta. Actually, if you can really squint your eyes and see here next to the username of that post that we can see here, there's a little gray icon that says 1 Delta. Delta means that you have successfully changed someone's view. People get very invested in this. And I think it's wildly interesting from a user's perspective, but also from a news and journalism coverage perspective. There are a lot of really interesting topics here, and because the conversation is set up to be really robust, as facilitated by the relative sophistication of our commenting product, in that you can reply to individual comments, but you can have multiple conversations going within a single comment thread, and comments can be voted on up or down. So even if you're not participating in the conversation yourself, you are able to participate in a way by casting a vote, and the voting affects the ranking and sorting of the comments. So naturally, the top stuff goes to the top, and the least popular stuff goes down to the bottom, which I think allows for a sophistication and nuance to conversation that is often difficult to achieve elsewhere, where it's just comment, comment, comment. You can't really rank or sort those.
Yeah, it must be very interesting that the rhetorical, like changing someone's mind is the ultimate victory in rhetoric. Like, what does that look like? I wonder through Reddit. There must be some prism. So Reddit's giving me hope for humanity here at a time when everyone is worrying about social media and its impacts elsewhere. So clearly, we need to jump ahead. This is the ultimate hope for humanity. Has to be Cowbro.
Yes. So Crowbro is the Crowbro is more of a fun one. Redditors tend to love animals, and they have a particular fascination with birds. I believe there's a subreddit also called Birds Aren't Real. So that's a fun one. Also, Birds with Arms is a good one. They Photoshop human arms onto birds. Always a fun time. Yeah, we're well known for that one. We did a fun Super Bowl activation where they Photoshopped quarterback arms onto an owl. This is a bit of a diatribe, but Redditors also love puns, in particular bird puns. So we have a subreddit called Superb Owl, obviously spelled the same way as Super Bowl. It's not about the Super Bowl, it's about owls. But every time the Super Bowl comes around, they got a lot of misdirected search traffic, so we always do an activation. Crowbro is not as deceptive in its titling. It's actually very straightforward. It's basically people who love crows and corvids posting photos of why they're awesome, sharing the relationships that they develop with their local crows. And it's really cool. I learned a lot about crows. They are very intelligent, and I think we all saw recent news that crows actually have self-awareness. So they say, I want to eat possum for dinner tonight, and they go find a dead possum, I guess.
And they go, I wonder why I want that. Who am I really?
Yeah.
No, that's thank you for that whistle stop tour through some of the wild diversity of Reddit, Gabriel. I'm going to go back and check out Cowbro later. Crowbro. Is there a Cowbro? Is there one for cows too?
There probably is. I'm actually living next to an alpaca farm these days, so I've been wondering if there's one for those creatures as well.
Yeah, there must be one for people from the city discovering the country as part of 2020 relocations, right? So let's see. Coming back over to the mechanics of Reddit and using Reddit for publishers. You're the head of news partnerships at Reddit. So what are your goals for media partnerships at Reddit, and what do you want ideally those relationships to look like?
Yeah, so the relationships can look like a number of different things, but on a high level, there are generally two sides to it. One is helping news orgs if they are, willing, able, and interested to engage on the platform in a way that is beneficial to them and by extension, beneficial to our users as well. The Washington Post was historically the first major paper to, crack that nut, as it were, but there are many since who have been able to see success and really integrate onto the Reddit platform effectively. That was a very short answer, but obviously if folks are interested in learning more, follow up with me and we can kick the tires on that. And then the other side of it is using Reddit as a source. And that is the part that we're particularly focused on right now. Obviously the two end up informing each other, but this is part of Reddit's unique value. And at Reddit, on the partnerships team, our focus is generally to lean into the things that only Reddit can do. And I think leveraging Reddit as a content source is particularly unique to us. Obviously, other platforms get cited, but due to the overall depth and breadth of conversation happening on Reddit, I think there's a really unique opportunity there. In some ways, we are part platform and also part publisher of UGC content, although a lot of people pitch me stories all the time. So I think people are confused about what we are, but that's okay. They often thank me for my lovely blog. I wish I could take credit. And that's what we're really excited about, this integration with Newswhip, because the biggest hurdle to using Reddit as a source of content has been finding the content that you want to source in the first place, finding the needle in the proverbial haystack. And the Newswhip integration is particularly effective at that because it allows you to search Reddit posts and Reddit comments, which previously had not been searchable, and as I've been trying to demonstrate, are often really where the meat is. And that's really what we're looking to encourage. I think that this is a really easy way for Reddit to be able to deliver value to news and media publishers. I call it the indirect traffic opportunity because Reddit isn't actually sending you referral traffic, but our content is engaging on your platform and therefore drives lots of clicks and engagement for you. In addition to which, I think it really presents an opportunity for unique news coverage. There's a lot of stuff that exists on Reddit that really isn't elsewhere on the internet. We have a very unique swath of audience that doesn't exist on other platforms. So using, of course, proper citation and attribution, we really want to enable that. And it can take a number of different forms. There's one-off story coverage, looking for an anecdote here and there. We've worked with news orgs on full-on editorial series. We've worked on video series. We've worked on broadcast coverage. We've worked on podcasts. There are many different ways to slice and dice it, but we basically want to unlock that door so that publishers can derive unique value from us.
Great. And there's two distinct things, and these might be our last questions maybe to touch on before we ask our audience for some questions. Like when you're going in through, and the great thing about our integration again is full text, so it's all the comments, everything. And when users go in and they find interesting content, like some publishers have historically been very good at that. Viral publishers like BuzzFeed have mined Twitter, or have mined Reddit and pulled out kind of listicles almost straight out of subreddits. Would you like, would you like to see, Reddit properly attributed and posts like Facebook posts and Twitter tweets embedded into stories in a similar manner?
Yes, proper attribution is key. And I would say it's even more important for Reddit than for other platforms because Reddit is not fully in the mainstream canon. And hopefully I've debunked a lot of assumptions about Reddit on the course of this call, but the best way that we can continue that is by showcasing quality content from Reddit in a clear and consistent way so that it provides attribution to the community and to the user and by extension to the platform. And I think by formatting that consistently, it starts to help general users and the general public make the connection. So we offer an embeds product for both posts and comments that makes it really easy to attribute in a clean, consistent way, one that's also legally compliant. And that is going to be very important for us. You do not necessarily need to reach out to an individual user every time you want to feature a post or comment from them. The embeds allow you to, again, do that in a clear way. But depending on the nature of the topic, you may want to as a gesture, or maybe you want to dig in and learn a little bit more and you have to direct message the user to do that. All the more reason to have an account on Reddit, because that is what will enable you to get in touch with that user. And if anyone is running into a particular situation where they have questions about the right way to angle into that, if they are taking the more higher touch approach, I'm available as a resource to help guide them.
And there was, as well as the content that's on Reddit, some of the comments are really good. So on the day after the New York Times published the president's tax returns, we saw immediately there was really high upvotes in Tax Pros, which is a subreddit for tax professionals. And there was some really high quality taking apart of exactly what everything meant, like within hours. So it was like what you have is a community of tax professionals who were unpacking this together and upvoting the most complete explanation of what was happening. So for any journalist who's not at the Times and it drops like a bomb onto your head that morning, there's this really thorough explanation that you can access. And I think that's a really powerful and unusual thing. But of course, because of the pseudonymity, it's a little harder to quote. So how do you, and again, it is a little bit like Wikipedia, you know, it's probably right most of the time, and it's definitely been, you know, weathered through a lot of people's comment, but it might still, you know, be wrong. How do you see media approaching that question of using the quotes?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where context is going to be key. Some communities are better moderated than others. So you're going to want to source content from communities that have robust moderation teams where there is definitely a quality standard in place. Also use your own editorial judgment, you know, then, now, and always. And also, you know, look for a critical mass of engagement. You know, it is, I think, very unlikely, specifically to use your example, in a community that is dedicated to tax professionals, that a low quality comment would receive hundreds of upvotes, because that's basically hundreds of people backing something up that is low quality, which really does not, it's not something that we have experienced. And then in addition to the user quality control, there's also the moderator quality control. They are removing, you know, each subreddit has its own rules, and, you know, the enforcement of those rules is up to the moderators, of course.
Gabriel, I'll cut you off right there because we want to allow a couple of audience questions before we run out of time. Dan, hello, Dan. It's good to hear from you. If we can't see you, Dan from Activision Blizzard is interested in what you raised about taking potentially from the community without participating. So, you know, how are brands meaningfully joining communities, he asks.
Sure. So there are two quick examples of taking in different forms. One example of taking is using the community to basically be a traffic driver for you. That is an obvious example. I would say the other example of taking is ripping content from the community without any form of attribution, which is more common than you would suspect. How do brands meaningfully join communities? A number of ways. And again, you know, Washington Post, Dallas Morning News, Texas Tribune are all really good examples. AMAs are a great way to contribute value to the community while also promoting your work and your journalism. I would say that providing assets or information to communities that they would find useful and valuable is a really good way to to give. And frankly, just citing content properly, because when there's a clear path back to the community, that allows the community to get more recognition and theoretically to grow, which is really what they care about at the end of the day. So you're basically giving them, by leveraging your audience and your power and clout as a news org, to direct people back to this community. And in many ways, it can be a tacit endorsement of the quality of that community. And that's what they care about at the end of the day. You know, the community is really important to them, so they want to see it grow and thrive.
Great. Okay, can you think you can answer a question in 30 seconds, Gabriel?
I'll try.
One more question from the audience. What type of news tends to break first on Reddit before other platforms? Is that like UGC, product reviews, some kind of investigation?
I would say I would say UGC is definitely going to be the most predominant because that is what Reddit has really been predicated around. I don't often view Reddit as a breaking news platform per se.
Mhm.
I view Reddit as a platform for discussion and discourse around breaking news and other items. I think that Reddit is particularly good for analysis and those types of things. I think we're seeing more and more breaking news on the platform. But I would say UGC is definitely going to be where we will stand out in that regard.
Awesome. You did it. That was 30 seconds, I'm sure. And also, Gabriel, that was a really fascinating interview. We packed in a lot. I hope that was really informative for everyone who was able to join today. We're going to have another Pulse in 2 weeks. We'll be sharing the topic on all of our channels as usual ahead of time. We've got another special one coming in 2 weeks with some surprise stuff again. But right now, please join me in saying thank you to Gabriel Sands, Head of News Partnerships at Reddit, for joining us today. Thank you, Gabriel.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, we'll see you. Take care. Bye-bye,
Have a good
everyone.
weekend.
You
Bye.
too. Bye-bye.